Just give me one more moment. It says we're live streaming, but we're not actually. So give me 1 second to figure out what's going on. Okay. Okay, we are good to go.
And it is 9 a.m. So we will call the meeting to order for November the 24th, 2023 at 9 a.m. Welcome, everyone. I understand everyone's glad to be able to stay home on this little bit of winter day. The first item on our agenda is the land acknowledgement, and this morning Mayor Janet Horner from Mulmer will share that with us. Mayor Horner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority Board acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe. The Anishinaabe include the Ottawa, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe, Mississauga, and Algonquin, who spoke several languages, including Anishinaabe and Patomaoni. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people.
Thank you very much. If there are any declarations of pecuniary interest, you may make them now or at any time throughout the meeting. So we now have a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated. I don't believe there's any amendments. I have on mine that it's moved by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Mayor Horner. Resolved that the agenda for the Board of Directors meeting number 1023 BOD dated on November the 24th, 2023 be approved. So if you can now all use your onboard voting to cast your decision. Thank you. Is that carried yet?
Sorry about that. Through the chair, we had to double check how many board members we have because we only have 7 votes. We have 9 now. Okay, perfect. So it's been approved.
Okay, thank you very much. We did have regrets from Councillor Mantlo today. I don't know if there were any other regrets. Okay, the next item is announcements. On the agenda, it says there are no announcements at this time. However, I just wanted to remind board members that thanks to Byron Wesson, there is the Indigenous Awareness Day organized for December the 13th. I unfortunately have all-day meeting that day and will not be able to attend, but I do hope some other board members will be able to participate. So the next item is presentations. So we have Kira House here to do a presentation on the Conservation Lands Program. So Kira, are you with us? I will turn it over to you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair Little. Good morning. So my name is Kyra House. I am the Director of Conservation Services with Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority. Today, we're going to take a little tour, excuse me, of our properties and learn about our Conservation Lands Program. So this photo is our Patoon Conservation Area. So it's located on the Niagara Escarpment in the town of the Blue Mountains. Next slide, please. Thank you. NVCA owns about 5,300 hectares across the watershed. So in the northwest, we have this small parcel along the waterfront in Collingwood. We've got properties to the south, along the Oak Ridges Moraine, to the east in Oro-Medonte, and of course our crown jewel, Minising Wetlands, in the center of the watershed. Next slide, please. NVCA's land acquisition program. I'm getting some feedback. Are you guys getting that as well?
Yes.
I'm just muting everybody, so give me 1 second. I think you should be good now.
Thank you. So our acquisition program began in the 1960s. Some of the early properties were for flood protection, but recreation has always been a strong focus, the lands that are owned by NVCA. To the exception of the Tiffin Conservation Area, which you're all familiar with, the properties we lease out to partners, NVCA's lands are used for passive recreation, so hiking, paddling, bird watching, not washing. We don't have any ski hills or water parks or other significant infrastructure on our properties. Next slide, please. So by now, I'm sure you've all heard the science behind how spending time in nature benefits your mental health. If there's one good thing about the pandemic, it was that people really started to realize the benefits of spending time out in nature. We've known this for a while, but everyone seems to have figured this out, which is really great. So this image is a group of homeschoolers visiting the Nottawasaga Bluffs Conservation Area in Clearview as part of our education program. I can guarantee that this group of kids saw probably very little wildlife because they were so noisy. Their excitement was just, you could hear it from the hilltops, quite literally. I could hear them before I could see them. A lot of the work that we do is enabling these connections to be made. So these kids will be the leaders of tomorrow, and creating these connections early will foster a lifelong appreciation of the environment. Connecting with nature builds confidence, it promotes creativity, teaches responsibility, gets people moving, reduces stress, and it's something that we can all benefit from. Next slide, please. So something that's important to us as an organization is ensuring that we're providing accessible opportunities on our lands. So in the past few years, we've been making a concerted effort to improve the infrastructure and trails to accommodate all types of trail users. So though we aren't necessarily able to provide fully accessible trails in our conservation areas, where we're able to make improvements, we actively seek external funding to improve our facilities and our trails. So last year, staff received a grant from the federal government to build an accessible pond dipping platform at the Tiffin Conservation Area. So this has allowed students of all abilities to engage in the same learning opportunities as the rest of their classmates. So it's really important for the students to be able to feel included with the rest of the group and to share similar experiences. Next slide, please. We live in an area that's rich in recreational opportunities. And as an organization, we're fortunate to be able to provide these opportunities for watershed residents and visitors. So this photo is the Mad River going through the Glencairn Conservation Area in Agila-Tos-Roneo. Glencairn's our smallest active conservation area, but even though it's small, it sometimes has big challenges. Next slide, please. So finding a balance with users can sometimes be a challenge. In instances like these, we'll work with our municipal partners. We'll look at how we can identify solutions on a larger scale. In this case, we identified a few options that would help prevent this type of activity. It's not always foolproof, but we've definitely seen some success. So obviously this type of activity isn't permitted on our conservation areas, but informing our partners about permitted and prohibited activities has been really useful. So if other agencies are aware of what activities are taking place on our properties and they're aware of what's permitted and prohibited, we're more likely to be notified, which allows us to address the issue. Next slide, please. So as municipal partners, you're familiar with the increase in population in our watershed and the associated increase in pressures for recreational opportunities. A lot of our conservation areas saw an exceptional increase in use in the past 5 years. So we had a huge surge during the pandemic, which is somewhat subsided now, but the cat's definitely out of the bag, and watershed residents and visitors are increasingly accessing our properties for recreation. So some parks like Ontario Parks or Canada Parks and conservation authorities have moved to a booking system to handle the visitors. NVCA isn't quite there yet, but we'll consider it if we need to. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our lands program is definitely in a state of flux right now. We still see historical issues that are common with rural areas, such as illegal hunt stands, but we're also facing issues that are more common in urban areas, like illegal encampments. So we continue to learn how to address both the old and the new issues. Next slide, please. Our lands team is just as multi-purpose as our lands are. It's not uncommon to see them out cutting grass, doing wedding tours, or doing enforcement on our properties. From an enforcement perspective, we take an education first approach. We rarely write tickets. Maybe it's just that we're too polite, but with limited resources that we have, this has worked well for us so far. Next slide, please. So we've talked about the recreational opportunities provided by our lands, but the other equally important component to our lands program is the protection of the natural features contained within lands. So for example, there are 36 federally listed species at risk and 8 globally rare species that have been identified on NVCA properties. So that's you know, the great asset of our lands. Menacing wetlands, for example, provides the only known Canadian habitat for the Hines emerald dragonfly. So this endangered species has very, very specific habitat requirements. The larval stage, so when it's like a crawling insect of the dragonfly, lives in crayfish burrows, and as an adult can be found near grassy fens. So menacing is a very special place, and it's worth the protection that we can provide it. Next slide, please. The Nottawasaga watershed is a very diverse landscape, and so are our land holdings. A common feature with the properties that we own are the streams and the wetlands that are protected within the properties. Next slide, please. So it's important to us as an organization to find a balance between the ecological needs and protection and providing opportunities for residents and visitors. If we're considering any improvements or changes to the property, we always look at it through an ecological lens. Is this the right location for a trail? Is there a way that we can improve this trail to minimize the impact? And this is why not all of our properties are open to the public. Next slide, please. Thank you. We wouldn't be able to accomplish all the great things that we do without an extensive network of partnerships. NVCA engages with individual volunteers, community groups, municipal partners, not-for-profit organizations, small businesses, all to help with our events and our properties. This image is the Festival at Fort Willow. This year we had probably over a dozen volunteers helping out with the event. And the commitment the volunteers show for these events and the work that we do is really inspiring. Next slide, please. So we have a variety of arrangements to assist with the management of our properties. We have lease agreements with municipalities such as the town of New Tecumseh. We also hold leases with a volunteer-led fish hatchery and have a management agreement with Friends of Utopia Gristmill and Park for the Utopia Conservation Area in ESSA. Friends of the Utopia Conservation Area have spearheaded the restoration of the historic gristmill, and by spearhead, I mean like really led the charge. In the past 5 years, they've raised tens of thousands of dollars to support revitalization projects at the property, and not only the mill, but also infrastructure improvements and trail upgrades as well. Next slide, please. We've been very fortunate to also have a great partnership with the Rotary Club Barrie. So this group has provided funding to assist with infrastructure projects like the viewing platform and the dock, but they're also an integral part of our annual Spring Tonic Maple Syrup Festival. Festival is held annually at Tiffin Conservation Area and brings in thousands of visitors over the course of the weekend. Rotary helps coordinating and staffing the event. So last year, there was over 700 volunteer hours spent over the course of the weekend. 700 hours, that's a lot. And this doesn't even include all the time spent organizing and ensuring the event is a success. So the proceeds from this event, the Spring Tonic, helps to support the community and helps to maintain the conservation area. Next slide, please. So you'll frequently hear NVCA talking about an integrated approach. We take an integrated approach on a watershed level, but also from an organizational level. So our conservation lands program provide the opportunity to engage the community, provide rewarding volunteer opportunities, and provide educational opportunities to learn about our natural and cultural heritage. We're always looking for new and innovative ways to generate revenue, but our maple syrup program is one of those tried and true methods. Next slide, please. So in the next year, we're going to be developing a number of plans as required by the province. We have to do a lands inventory as well as a conservation lands strategy. So the strategy is intended to help inform decision-making related to the lands that we own. And it's also going to include a public engagement component. So these plans will give us the opportunity to develop a better understanding of our lands. So our staff will be working on these plans in the next year. Next slide, please. So similar to our events mentioned earlier, we use our conservation area lands to generate external revenue through weddings and other events. We've got beautiful spaces that are used by our education program Monday to Friday, and then sitting available on weekends. So we're continuing to grow our weddings and events programs. This has the added benefit of continuing to foster these connections with the community, with members of the public, and also to provide funding to support the maintenance of our conservation areas. I don't know the number of people that have had their weddings here that had also participated in our education program. So it's really neat to see that continuation as they flow through their lives. Next slide, please. So one of our big challenges is meeting the expectations of our visitors. They may be more familiar with parks in urban areas and are looking for a similar type of experience. So something that's familiar to you as well is that as we add more infrastructure, our maintenance costs increase. Our recent focus has been on upgrading our current infrastructure because we always want to provide safe and enjoyable outdoor experiences. Next slide, please. So you may remember an earlier slide where I showed a bunch of vehicles that are parked along the snowy roadways. So these were at the Patoon Conservation Area in Blue Mountains and Nottawasaga Bluffs in Clearview. So removing roadside parking has been a priority for us, and we were successful in securing external funding to provide parking off-road in both of those locations. So this was the project plan for the Bluffs. You can see we had very limited parking for only a handful of vehicles. So it wasn't uncommon to get to the Bluffs at 10 o'clock and the parking lot was completely full. So next slide, please. So for the Bluffs, we were able to secure funding and create a parking lot for about 40 vehicles. So we'll be able to pull those vehicles off the road and ensure it's a lot safer for everybody else. And we also installed a vault washroom at this location. So it's one of our most popular conservation areas. And now we're able to safely accommodate the visitors and provide a better experience. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just like restoration, tree planting, and even education, our conservation lands program is about the long term. When we acquire lands, we're making a commitment to protect these lands. We recognize there's a need for land for agriculture and space for development for people to live, but we also need to preserve these green spaces. So when I'm speaking to somebody about potentially donating the property, they're wanting to not only leave a legacy, but they want others to have the opportunity to enjoy the experiences that they did. There's a reason our watershed is growing so quickly. Part of that reason is because the green spaces in the natural areas that are available. So I want to take the opportunity to tell the board about some very exciting opportunities that we're currently working on. So we're currently working on the acquisition of 3 new properties in Minisink. So 2 are tax sale purchases with the Township of Springwater, and the third one is a potential donation. I'm so excited, I'm tripping on my words, sorry. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to share more details on the properties before the end of this year. So the donation I'm particularly excited about because it really demonstrates to us that people are passionate about what we do and they trust us to preserve and protect their legacy. So we're working also on a bequeath request, so leaving their property to us in their will, and another possible donation in other municipalities. Next slide, please. I think that's about it. Did anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much, Kyra, for the presentation. Are there any questions regarding the presentation of the conservation areas? I can't, could we take the screen sharing away? So I can see, thank you. I don't see anyone with any questions. Oh, Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Chair Little. Just a question specifically to the potential of land donations. last night there's a landowner at the 31st, 30th side road and number 10, actually quite close to the
You know,
Nottawasaga Lookout Provincial Park, I see, or, you know, and Rob Roy, etc.
we may have lost our chair. Oh, she looks frozen.
Oh,
Oh,
dear.
there she is. Are you there, Chair Little?
I am.
Oh, we can't hear you though.
I can hear her.
I was gonna say, but I'm getting an echo.
We're all good now.
Should I continue? Okay, so the question,
There is still an echo.
I'll ask it later. Thank you.
Can we try one more time, Councillor? Oh, it's still echoing.
I'll try again. I was speaking to a landowner who has 40 acres right at the 31st, 30th side road and concession 10. I'm assuming that's within NVCA's catchment area.
Through the chair, yes, I believe so.
Okay. I won't say more at this point. I'm just doing some fact finding. We'll have a chat at another time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. If there's no further questions, I just wanted to say thank you. Oh, Mayor Horner.
Just again on land acquisition, given the government's recent decisions that they can designate some of conservation lands available for development, have we seen any hesitation on the part of landowners to donate land if they know that could happen to their lands?
Yes, if I may, through the chair. One of the potential donations did indicate that as a concern. But there are additional mechanisms in place for an added level of protection. So in this case specifically, they're interested in looking into a federal eco-gifts program. So what this is, it provides the donor with a tax benefit, but then also puts on an additional layer of protection. So there are limitations or the restrictions to what can take place on that property thereafter. So the property has to be donated in a highly significant ecological condition. And then this eco-gifts layer of protection requires it to be maintained in that same condition as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further comments or questions? I would like to thank you, Kyra, for your presentation and again for emphasizing the value of our conservation areas and these special significant areas that you are take care of, because they are just so valuable to our province. And they provide such a wonderful, relatively inexpensive activity for families to be able to use them. And it's just so wonderful that we have this green space. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. We do have a motion. I have it moved by Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Belanger, that the Board of Directors receive this presentation as presented. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, we will go to your on board to vote, please.
Councillor Shell, that's my vote because I'm not accessing onboard.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Through the chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Okay, we have no deputations or hearings today. So that does move us on to the consent agenda. We did have a request by Councillor Belanger to pull item 12.2.3. Are there any other items that anyone would like to have pulled from the consent agenda for discussion or questions? I don't see any. So item number 11 then is a recommendation by Mayor White, seconded by Councillor Porter. Resolved that agenda items number 12.2.3 was identified as requiring separate discussion, be referred for discussion under item number 12, and further that all consent list agenda items not referred for separate discussion be adopted as submitted to the board, and staff be authorized to take all necessary action required to give effect to the same. And further, that any items in the consent list not referred for separate discussion and for which conflict has been declared are deemed not to have been voted on or discussed by the individual making the declaration. So once again, if we could go to on board to vote, thank you.
Through the chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. So we now move then to item 12.2.3 that was requested to be pulled by Councillor Belanger. So Councillor Belanger, did you wish to comment or have a question?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. It's just a little clarification because it was quite a complicated report, but I kind of wanted to have an understanding that if there was a surplus, was the money going into a reserve for the same category, or were we shifting money around to make it available for new or additional initiatives? It was a little hard for me to follow. So, we have the same thing at the municipalities, but I'm sure for the most part, it's just a case of moving it into a reserve for future use and for the same initiatives. But I thought the staff might want to speak to that a bit.
Okay, thank you. Director Flanagan.
Thank you, and through the chair. The quick answer is yes, everything's going to reserves if there's a surplus, and it's going into category 3 programs for the category 3 programs and the category 1 programs for the category 1 programs. The biggest confusion related to this one is there's a lot of moving parts with some of our reserves. The Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy repayment, as you're all aware, we had to repay that this year. When we put it into reserves, we'd put it in, we're taking out very similarly to how we put it in. And so it's kind of an in and out just over the course of a couple of years. Another one that's very important is our planning reserve. So planning through the act, all surpluses and deficits must go through the planning reserve. Unfortunately, when there is no planning reserve because it has hit zero, which has happened in the past, then that comes out of the regular operationals. So that's why you'll see that mentioned in there as well. And then what we do is we say, okay, if there is going to be a surplus, here's how we want it divvied out. And basically we want to have it divvied out between capital, HR, and operational reserves.
Thank you. Are you satisfied, Councillor Belanger?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or questions regarding this item? I don't see any. So then we will move to the vote. We have a resolution moved by Councillor Cox, seconded by Councillor Lougheed, that the staff report number 481023 BOD regarding the surplus deficit allocations be approved, and further that the NVCA auditor be directed to place any 2023 surplus deficit funds in or out of the reserves as listed. I'm not going to read them all off, but there is a list there. So if you could move to on board to cast your ballot, that would be great. Thank you very much.
On my board chair, it was already showing that I voted yes, but I am voting yes, but it didn't allow me to, as a new vote, it was already done. So
Okay,
And
Thank
through
you
the
for
chair, that
that.
motion is carried.
okay, thank you
Okay.
so much. So that does bring us down to other business. Do we have any other business today? From any of the members?
Through the chair, I'll check with whether it's appropriate, but every meeting we've been getting an update on the COO's progress on the MOUs. I didn't know if there was any update for this meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. CAO Hebner, have you an update for us?
I was going to bring that update on December 8th, but I can give you some verbal information as you go now. We've proceeded and progressed through this with our municipal partners, trying to see if we can come through to fruition. You know, in October 1st, we petitioned the government for an extension beyond the December 31st ending date. We've had no word back from the minister's office. I've inquired twice since October and had no further decision made on that. So we're proceeding forward on the assumption that we hope we get the extension until this March 31st of 2024. The progress to date, we have 6 of our municipalities that have executed and signed documents for the MOU supporting category 1, 2, and 3, and they've delivered that information to us. We have 5 additional municipalities that have passed through their community of whole, an indication for the mayor and the clerk, and or their directed person, like in the case of Blue Mountains, they directed that responsibility to their director of planning. And that was the same case in New Tech. We worked with their director of planning as well. 5 of those, so that's 11 that look like they're moving forward. 4 of the municipalities that we've been talking to from the very start have indicated that they're supportive of category 1, 2, 3, and 4, but they haven't proceeded to sign the document or move forward with the document yet at this time. And we have 3 municipalities, and I think I'll identify those as Springwater, Mulmer, and ESSA, where they're still in the decision mode of what aspects they'll support. They've had some really fulsome dialogues with their CEO and council on the merits of category 3 and the needs of the budget for each of those municipalities. Springwater initially said they were not going to support any category 3 services. Since that time, most recently this week on the 22nd, they had a council meeting where they brought that back onto the table. That was led by our member, Mr. Fisher, the deputy mayor, and Councillor Moore. And what they've decided to do is pretty much support them. They want more information from us on that. So I'll be following up with CAO Smith when he reaches out to me with that information. ESSA has initially indicated that council may not be supportive, and then in conversation with the CAO, she suggested she hadn't taken a staff report further to the ESSA council. I have a meeting this afternoon with the CAO from ESSA to discuss their category 3 needs. They have some questions and concerns on land management, and I think you saw a very fulsome presentation today on how we manage our lands. So that's where we are right now. You know, I can't speak for the 3 that I mentioned. That will be council decisions in their point. And I can't seem to move councils or staff any faster than they've been moving. So I hope that provides you with some information, Councillor Blondin.
Thank you for that update. That's
Through the chair, if I may, I have some additional other business. Just recently, we were approached by Conservation Ontario on a climate change action opportunity through the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway funding. You may remember that Jonathan and Gail brought forward a letter talking about, is this funding going to get put back on the table? This is a national funding project available to anyone in Canada. You work through municipal partners in order to do this. Initially, they didn't identify Georgian Bay as one of the areas that could acquire this type of funding. We made a really strong case through Conservation Ontario, working with Bonnie Fox and CEA's General Manager Angela Coleman there. and we were allowed to be put on the table. We've then reached out to our partner in conservation over to our western side, Grey Sawville Conservation Area, and we're looking at developing a project that runs from the northern limits of their watershed just south of Tobermory's tip, all the way down along the lakeshore, inclusive of the MEC property at Craigleith, the Wasaga Beach property, MEC property, all the inclusive municipalities. And our watershed, that would include Collingwood and Wasaga Beach. I've reached out to both CAOs in Collingwood and Wasaga Beach. I had a very good conversation yesterday with CAO Skinner in Collingwood. She's up for this type of project work. There's the lion's share of the funding is coming from the federal government. We've created what we think is approximately a $600,000 project. The conservation authorities would provide in-kind services in identifying the risk hazards and the property values along that watershed to identify the clusters of infrastructures, values, and what they're worth. I know that the shoreline is very important to Wasaga Beach, as well as very important to Collingwood in the development features that they have planned for their future. Our last work in Wasaga Beach was 2014. Our last work on the shoreline management planning area or aspect was 2016 in Collingwood. So the input from our municipal partners on this would be, in a 3-year project, a $5,000 cash push forward by each municipality. So a $15,000 total. So you look at that, the feds are coming through with a lot of money. Now, there's no guarantees we can get this done. We have a really short timeline here, December 15th. I think we need to hear back from 3 additional partners, and we'll have 100% buy-in along the shoreline. We've also reached out to SON, the Southern Ojibwa Nation, to see if they're interested in participating. And I've a call into the park superintendent at MECP to see if there was maybe some type of in-kind service or some type of connection we could make with MECP, because I think that shoreline at Craigleith and the shoreline in Wasaga Beach at the provincial park are important players. This is an important project. It's hard for us to access funds. You can see in our budget requests, we were asking for funds. When we ask for significant amounts of funds, there's lots of conversation. You'll see newspaper articles about it. But this is the type of work that the CAs need to do. We need to get this planning out there in front so your planning teams have it. So when you're doing official plans or you're doing EPs or you're upgrading your risks and perils within your own municipalities, and it's just not to the shoreline. We need to be able to start to do these studies as flood studies in your urban areas, in your development lands. So funding is going to be an important part of what we require and moving forward. So if anyone has any questions on this, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you.
Well, thank you for that update. Are there any questions?
Through the chair, I just asked, has Wasaga Beach CEO committed 15,000, or do I need to talk to them?
You can give him a shout if you would, Councillor Blanchet. I have an email message to him, and I was going to follow up with a phone call this morning and or after our meeting and just see if I could get a hold of Andrew. So,
okay, I would think that's a very reasonable ask. So, but
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good to see that's moving along. Any other business that anyone wishes to bring forward at this time? I don't see any. So that does bring us to the final motion of the day, and that's the motion to adjourn. I have it moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Councillor Fisher, that the meeting adjourn at 9:38 a.m. to meet again on December the 8th, 2023, or the call of the chair. And I believe, just to confirm, December 8th meeting will be an in-person meeting as planned, unless the weather dictates otherwise. So we will see you in person on December the 8th. So if we could vote on that motion, please.
And through the chair, if my computer was faster, it might have been the fastest one that gone today, but that motion has carried.
Thank you. It usually is the fastest motion of the day. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating this morning. It's great to see you all, and I wish you all to enjoy this day and your weekend, etc., the snow that you might have. So till it's only 2 weeks, we'll see you in person. Thanks so much.
Bye now.